Inspiration for the business was to help all children get to the best start nutritionally. There were only 3% of baby food consumed in the US and probably Canada as well was organic. Never really approached work from a 9 to 5 mentality. I was so inspired by a white paper on infant brain development. I really understood nutrition and the role of nutrition in a child's future, but I didn't understand the role of stimulation. Babies love to understand deeply this concept of containment. What research shows and what parents often don't understand is that they also love to see what does not contain. If you invest early, it can make a huge difference in a child's future.
Before you launched the first startup, which is the Happy Family or Happy Baby Organics, you had a stable 9 to 5 job. So, what was your motivation, or what was your mindset for you to leave that 9 to 5 and to jump into something which you had to start from scratch?
Yeah, I think I've never really approached work from a 9 to 5 mentality. I will say that I've just always been really passionate about what I'm putting my energy towards. And so for me, I was so excited about the pace of business and the ability of the business community to really make a difference in society. And I also was so excited to understand this concept of social entrepreneurship. So thinking about building a business with the purpose being forward and being the purpose is the why is so obvious to myself and to the customer. And so I co-founded Happy Family Organics. My co-founder had the idea for the business. She's really brilliant and innovator. And we together decided that we, wanted to take on the processed jarred baby food market that was so ripe for innovation. There were only 3% of baby food consumed in the US and probably Canada as well was organic. But that was just mind-blowing thinking about how the food by weight that a baby takes in, they take in actually a lot more pesticides by weight if they're eating conventional foods from the start. Um, and just thinking about the jarred and the processed foods as being the only choice that parents had other than making something homemade felt like there was a real problem to be solved there. So my co-founder and I just felt really passionate about doing something better for families.
Perfect. And was there any early challenges that you faced, like
I
during
mean,
the startup
it was
phase?
like what wasn't a challenge. I think that it was just everything was so hard and new. And I will say that, I think that the advice that I like to give people who have a startup where they haven't actually launched the product into the world is to just be really free with testing. So, meaning spend a lot of time testing, spend a lot of time putting ugly, unfinished prototypes in front of people, getting feedback, not being embarrassed, but just lean in to getting that feedback and iterating and making things better. That's probably why we started this conversation before we went on recording, with me asking you a bunch of feedback on Lovevery. Um, and so that's the first piece of advice. The second piece of advice would be to really set your emotions aside and just focus on the doing. It's very easy to sort of be really productive when you're feeling excited about something because you talked to somebody who really saw what you were doing and you built on their energy and maybe you got like one of the first investors or maybe somebody said, "Oh, I want to be a customer of yours someday." And then it can also be really draining if you talk to somebody who doesn't get it and who doesn't understand your vision. Oftentimes I find people who are in pre-launch startups losing their momentum when they have a bad day or they get some bad feedback. Actually doesn't really matter. What really matters is just moving forward and continuing to take all the steps necessary to just keep going and being productive.
Right. It's all about just going for having a mission and then to just keep going with it. Right. And a little curious. So, what do you look for in a business partner? Because initially you co founded with Shazi and then with Morris Lovevery. So, what do you look for in a business partner?
Yeah, I will say my co-founder Rod right now is just one of the best co-founders that I could ever imagine. And I also, had a really meaningful experience building Happy Family with Shazi. I would say that I feel that that it's just so hard to do it alone. I can't imagine people that do it alone. And Shazi was working on the business by herself and trying to write the business plan and thinking about what to do with Happy Family before we launched, before we joined forces. And I think that together it was 1 + 1 = 3 or more. There's just this encouragement that you can give each other. And then with Rod, I've just been blown away by his skills and his abilities to think about scaling up a company, his ability to build teams, his creative insights in meetings. So it's just so much more fun to do it with someone else. I think looking for a partner, I think you just look for that chemistry and you just want alignment with the vision for what you're building.
Yeah. And Happy Family or Happy Baby was launched in 2006, and your first child, the first kid, was born in 2010. So, did your vision for the company change before and after becoming a mother?
It is so interesting because many people don't quite get to that level of detail. So I'm very impressed that you um, thought about that with this journey that we had. So Shazi and I, neither one of us had children. She had a friend who was struggling to feed her baby fresh food and was like, I wish that there was an alternative. And that really created this spark for Shazi to think about creating a baby food company. I was working in the natural foods industry and I met Shazi and I was so excited about her vision and I felt like the category really did need innovation. I've been always really focused on health and wellness, but it was so interesting to not have children and be into the category. I will say that to answer your question, did anything change? I mean, we had a lot more ready testers, in my own children, but I also would say that we, had a employee base that was full of families, and we were always finding babies to try new flavors with, and the principles around what's healthy for a child are very similar to what's healthy for anyone, and so I think that really the inspiration for the business was to help all children get to the best start nutritionally.
Right. And like you were just telling that you had an opportunity to talk prior to being a mother, where you spoke to a lot of parents to get their feedback on. So, especially the first year could be so daunting and it's full of anxiety, especially when we introduce solids to the baby, where it's about gagging or choking or allergens. So, from your perspective, what do you think parents tend to overthink and stress about? And what areas which they can safely let go of?
Yeah, I mean that is really what we're here for at Lovevery. We do try to distill all of the overwhelming science. There's so much more information now than there was yesterday, than there was the day before. It is just unbelievable how much information is shared on social media and shared in everywhere. Um, you hear it from friends, you get advice from parents-in-law, you get advice from Instagram, and it feels like there's this never-ending to-do list as a parent. I would say I think that there is a lot of perhaps pressure to do baby-led weaning in a purist way. At Lovevery, we think about blending the benefits of baby-led weaning, which is self-feeding and independence and confidence around food, with a little bit more confidence for parents and safety for parents. So I remember with my third child, I did more um, giving my baby like a whole piece of steamed broccoli and just watching her gag was stressful, I will admit. And so I think helping parents know how to move from those first bites, and those can be purees, and you can get like some really good iron and nutrition in that they might be missing from breast milk or needing to fill some gaps through food, all the way through being a really independent self feeder. We have all those resources at Lovevery. We have this guidebook that we ship out. We actually just started shipping today this guidebook with anyone who starts on that 5, 6 month range. And then we have available to people who are getting Lovevery, they can get access to this really supportive course from an OT, PT, but we do try to make it less information and the important relevant information because I think it's so easy to focus on trying to be great at everything.
Right. So I remember because when I was very specific on getting my daughter introduced to the baby led weaning. So I remember the feedback that I got from family or even from my parents or in laws that You're just taking the childhood away from the baby. You're supposed to feed the baby. You can't just let the baby, she's not big yet. She's not a big person. She's a tiny baby. You can't let her explore food. So I guess letting the kids explore and understand what it is, the texture, that pretty much helps them with, again, learning as well. And just going to take you back to that phase during your first startup where it started as the Happy Family or Happy Baby started as a frozen food for babies, right? So, how did you all come up with the concept of frozen food? Like, why frozen food in the first place?
Well, we wanted to do fresh. And at the time, fresh baby food had such a short shelf life and was so difficult to distribute. There were some unique processes like high pressure processing and some technologies that would allow for vegetables, for example, to stay in a puree form for longer than, 7 days. But the the challenge was really being able to scale that and be able to afford that technology. And so we went to frozen because freezing food is the best way to preserve nutrients. And it also mimicked the way that parents were making food homemade. I will say it was very difficult for parents to find our food. So we really had to create a whole new category in the grocery store. Next to the ice cream and next to the frozen pizzas, there's frozen baby food. So that was a really big challenge and hurdle that we had to overcome.
Right. And yeah, so I was just reading about it where initially it started as frozen food and then to cereal puffs and then to pouches. Again, pouches, y'all were the innovators and y'all were the first company to start that. And then there were all the other companies who started replicating the same model. And so once Happy Family was acquired by Danone in 2014, you went on to start Lovevery. So again, so what drove you to was it the entrepreneurial skills which was always present in you?
Yeah, I was so inspired by a white paper on infant brain development that I read when I had my first. And so I felt like I really understood nutrition and the role of nutrition in a child's future, but I didn't understand the role of stimulation and what giving children different experiences that unfold over time could mean. And so I actually, if anybody wants the white paper that I read, this doctoral thesis, I'm happy to share it. Sometimes people like will DM me on Instagram or they can DM you and we can get connected. It was fascinating. What it did is it had nothing to do with any of the toys that I had in my house. I had all these hand-me-down toys. I had so many gifts, just like you. My house was full of stuff. But I found that what I was reading about how a infant's brain develops and how much brain development is happening in those early months and years didn't relate to the plastic flashy light toy or that gimmicky thing or the toys that we think of as toys in our environment. And children really, babies really benefit from these kind of specific experiences. And so, for example, we send a clear tube in your baby's next play kit. Will have this clear tube, and babies love to understand deeply this concept of containment. There's this pot and pan phase where you always imagine like a baby playing with a pot and a pan and a wooden spoon. Well, they love to put things into containers, and yet I think what research shows and what parents often don't understand is that they also love to see what does not contain. So if you think about it, you have a lot of toys around that are like buckets, or you can easily get a pot or a pan. But what about a clear tube where a baby can watch a ball dropping through the tube and out of the tube? They want to do this over and over and over again. And research shows that they actually have a much deeper, earlier, richer understanding of this concept of containment if given exposure to a simple thing like a tube. And so it's that multiplied times 100, if you can imagine all the things that babies love to learn about, but it's really based on real life experiences with manipulatives and tools and learning tools. The Montessori, has some good learning tools. There's also some things that we've invented that have really helped to kind of fuel development. And I had this huge aha moment where I started making my own toys, but I also found myself thinking, okay, what is my baby putting their mouth on? And oh, this isn't ideal because I can't make these two balls, one really heavy and one really light, one sinking, one floating in the bath, that there isn't anything that I can buy that's like that. And so I started coming up with these ideas and wishing that everyone I knew could read this doctoral thesis, could have these meaningful experiences with their baby, because if you invest early, it can make a huge difference in a child's future. So I was just really, for Lovevery, the inspiration was really just my own experience with my children and my desire to have everyone have that a kind of meaningful connection and aha moments with their children and give their children the very best start in life.
So that pretty much brings us to the end of this episode. And thank you, Jessica. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences, your wisdom, and also about Lovevery, because I'm more like, I'm waiting to explore more products from Lovevery. And if you're a new parent who's watching this episode, and if you're extremely exhausted, tired, and do remember, like Jessica said, this phase is temporary and you'll get through it, and spend as much time as possible with your child, because looking back, they'll not be small anymore. They'll grow up fast. So until next time, with another guest, thank you so much. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me and enjoy that baby of yours.